Did you see Chimp Empire when it came out?
I watched the first 20 minutes
That's it?
and there were too many mistakes. There were too many. See, I get really annoyed with what I consider to be misrepresentations of primate behavior
Okay.
that are used to sort of feed into a narrative of human behavior, which I also think is inaccurate. So, I mean, I don't remember all the details, but I remember one of the things they said right at the beginning was chimps are our closest primate ancestors or primate relatives. No, they're not. Chimps and bonobos are
Mm-hmm.
our closest primate relatives. Both of them equidistant
Mm-hmm.
from humans, right? Chimps are violent. Chimps are aggressive sometimes. There are all these kind of qualities of chimps that people like to point at. Bonobos are fucking totally chill. No one has ever seen a bonobo kill another bonobo or
Oh,
rape another
really?
bonobo. Never, never. In the wild, in zoos, never. Bonobos are highly sexualized. They're totally chill, not trying to control each other's behaviors. Male chimps sometimes control the females when they're ovulating and try not to keep the other males away from them. Bonobos don't do that at all. Bonobos are totally relaxed and highly sexualized and peaceful. And so when I see something that says chimps are the closest human relative, fuck you, dude. You're leaving out half the fucking story. You're leaving out half the science to support some agenda that isn't true. It's half true. So anyway,
Mm.
sorry to rant about that. I'm sure it was good. The chimps are fascinating, but anything that's pushing a all chimp, no bonobo agenda, I just can't fucking stomach it.
What would be the reason for the push?
The push is that it's promoting a vision of human behavior, which is that, the roots of human violence lie millions of years in our evolutionary past. And, males are bigger than females. So we've always pushed them around and raped them and dragged them off and clubbed them over the head and treated them disrespectfully. And it's, our nature for males to fight and kill and to, war against other groups that are competing for resources. This whole Hobbesian vision of the natural world and human nature and our behavior in the world. This is supported by a lot of the research into chimps, but it's totally undermined by the research into bonobos. And it's sometimes I say it's like I've got two brothers and they're twins, okay? Because chimps and bonobos are much more closely related to each other than they are to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
They separated 1 to 3 million years ago in evolutionary terms, whereas humans separated from that same line about 5 to 7 million years ago. So it's like I've got twin brothers and they're twins. I'm not a twin, right? So the two of them are twins. One of them is, a gang leader. He's a murderer. He's a rapist. He's a bad, bad dude, bad piece of work in and out of prison. The other one, helps children and, volunteers his time. He's going around the world doing good works. He's like Jesus. He's fantastic, but he's also sexually unconventional, let's say, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And people say, well, of course, Chris is a bad guy. Look at his brother. Look at that gangster, criminal, horrible person. They're from the same family. So, of course, Chris is going to be a bad guy, right? What about my other brother? How come nobody mentions my other brother? A, because it undermines the narrative that I'm a violent, horrible person and that's just my nature. It's in my DNA. And B, because that other brother's kind of embarrassing because he's got 4 different girlfriends and they all know each other and they all have sex together. And he has friends who have sex with them as well. And it's all totally open and cool. And that freaks everybody out.
Mm-hmm.
Franz Duvall, who's a great primatologist who's written a bunch of books about chimps and bonobos, told me a story about how he was hired by, I think it was National Geographic, to consult on a documentary they were going to make about bonobos. And he flew to Congo and met the film crew there. You know, they flew in with all their equipment and everything, and they went to this bonobo reserve and they started filming. And these bonobos, like bonobos have sex all the time. It's like the sort of phrase among primatologists is it's a bonobo handshake. So when they come up to each other, they sort of rub their genitals against each other. They don't have like full on intercourse necessarily, but they definitely rub their genitals. The males will like, it's called penis fencing. They sort of, hit each other with their dicks, and the females rub their clits against each other. And it happens all different combinations, different age groups, different everything, except male, except mother, son. That's the only combination that doesn't happen. Anyway, so these guys are filming, and they said to Franz, like, when are they going to stop having sex? And he said, oh, no, they have sex all the time. That's just the way they are. And the guy's like, well, we can't use this footage. And he said, well, that's bonobo behavior. That's how they are. And they're like, oh shit. And they, called back to Washington and explained the situation, and National Geographic or whoever it was canceled it. They said, well, we can't put this on TV. So we can't show this. It's embarrassing. So that's why people don't know about bonobos, because it leads to questions about the dominant narrative, right? Like we're in this narrative where, sex is very controlled and private and shameful, and, and associated with violence and murder and mayhem and all this, every fucking Hollywood movie where somebody has unconventional sex, they got to die, So that's why bonobos aren't really acknowledged much more now than when I started doing my PhD. I'd never heard of bonobos, and nobody was talking about them.
So why are we so much how are we at more ease with watching mass violence and gore films, and that's okay? And I agree with you. It's I have an interesting personal story with this too. But we're so much more accepting of violence and criminal behavior and things like that versus sex, open love, like everyone's consenting, everyone's an adult, like obviously like that's the undertone, but like that's embarrassing. We can't do that. We can't show animals and their natural behaviors because we have shame to that, but we can watch a lion tear apart a gazelle. That's okay. We can watch Jeffrey Dahmer. It's a huge hit all over Netflix and everything, and people are engrossed with it. But we can't have anything that's like sex life that gets torn apart because, oh my God, heaven forbid this woman want to find her sexuality. Personal story. I live in this town and there's like it's this kind of a small town, so everyone kind of knows everyone, and especially like the quote big players, everyone knows them. He was supposed to be like this big player was supposed to be investing in one of my husband's companies, found out that I had been in the porn industry and my husband has not. Like it's just me. So my husband, committed the sin of falling in love and marrying a former porn star. So pulls his funding, starts kind of reputation damaging around town, like don't do business with them, blah, 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 right? Like we're just untouchables. He then goes to start this nonprofit or not for profit organization in town that helps rehabilitate, not even rehabilitate. It's to kind of incentivize gang leaders to send their gang members in to learn entrepreneurship in the hopes that it would reduce violence. So he would start giving them jobs and teach them about like opening up your own business so long as there were no violent interactions in town. And like they were still allowed to deal drugs, still allowed to be active gang members, all of this. They just couldn't commit violence. And he was doing that project. And then it didn't even work. It ended up creating more problems than he was trying to help. So I think it recently got shut down. But I was like, I cannot believe that what I've done, which hasn't harmed anybody, is so untouchable. And like to the point that you're trying to like ruin my reputation within the community. And yet you're working with active gang members. It just was astonishing, like, the mental gymnastics for that was astonishing.
Yeah, and I would argue that it's even worse because open sexuality is actually something that weakens the impulse toward violence. So what he should have been doing was, you know, embracing the open expression of sexuality at the same time that he was working to alleviate violence.